Hello, people. Andrew here, talking about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view, in that order of importance to myself. Today I'm talking about Tomorrow Stories. So, what is Tomorrow Stories? Where can we start with that one? In 1999, Alan Moore released a series of books under America's Best Comics. That was the banner, that was the imprint that he was using. Um, and it included four titles, one of them which would be Tomorrow Stories. There was Top 10, Tom Strong, and Promethea. He was asked in Comics Journal, this is from 2021. He had an interview in Comics Journal, and the question was, why are you coming back to comics? And basically, not just comic books, but sort of that superhero sort of genre, which is something a genre that Al Moore has expressed that he doesn't really particularly like. And so Alan Moore's response to that is that, a comic book store can't stay open if it's just selling the independent comic books by Alan Moore, or he referenced the fact that it took him 10 years to have From Hell written and drawn, and it sold about 15,000 copies. I don't know how true his numbers are, but that's not enough to sustain himself, and it's not enough to sustain a comic book shop. All of the X-Men titles and all the other superhero titles that are in these stores, they're the ones that keep the doors open. And if the doors are open, this leaves room for some of the independents to come in and sell their wares, find an audience. Without the big names and the big numbers, the stores close down, and then nobody benefits from that. So he understands there's a need for the superhero, especially at this point in time in the market in 1999. And decides that he's going to try an experiment. He's going to do America's Best Comics, and he's released these four titles. They have that superhero feel to it, and the idea is that establish the imprint, America's Best Comics, as something that is trusted, good stories, good characters, good illustrations, something that when you see that imprint, you'll be inclined to pick up one of those books. In that case, as time goes on, he can then bring in some of these more fringe or independent creatives and tell different stories. Uh, but first, he has to establish a worthwhile imprint. And he does. I mean, the ABC line sold really well. The Tomorrow Stories itself was a 2000 Eisner Award winner for Best Anthology. Unfortunately, the line only lasted about 3 years, so this idea of younger or independent talent getting a chance on the ABC imprint never came to pass. So, what is Tomorrow Stories about? Well, it's a 12 issue series that ran from 1999 to 2001. It had two specials and one spin off. And it is an anthology series. You basically get four stories per book. One of them, I think, only has three. And you have four primary characters. Jack Be Quick, who is the boy genius sort of idea, and it's done with a very comical point of view. It's illustrated by Kevin Nolan. All of this stuff is written by Alan Moore, by the way. Cobweb, which is again Alan Moore by Melinda Gibby, or Gebby, I should say, is the artist. That's probably, to me, it's probably the weakest of the bunch. The illustrations vary depending on the mood of Melinda Gebby, and it's sort of a phantom lady, risque type of thing. It doesn't have necessarily a clear line of focus. It sort of wavers around. The First American. You got Jim Balke working on that. It's First American and the U.S. Angel. It is a bit of a parody, a satire on popular culture. And as you can see, the center one here is a gray shirt by Rick Vetch as the artwork. That one I like the most, and it's based somewhat on the spirit, that sort of concept. So you have the 12 issues. I'm missing 12 for whatever reason, and you have all of these four characters that are going through some interesting stories. Is it worth the read? Because there's not much more to tell you about that. Because as I said, all of these concepts are just pretty much explained, and it is done with a certain lighter tone. I think the gray shirt material works best. At least it does for me. It does a lot more experimental things with the paneling. With the artwork I really love by Rick Vetch. The stories are interesting. None of this stuff is particularly super heroic, but it lends itself to that image, and so people may buy it because of that. So is it worth a read? Well, I say yes, because I think they're all enjoyable stories. This one has a lot of fun. This is the idea with Jack B. Quick. And he's got like some sort of pseudoscience. He takes scientific things, or in this particular one, he's taking some somewhat he calls them known science principles, but they're not. You know, for example, the fact that cats always land on their feet and toast always lands butter side down. So if you put butter on the backs of a cat and drop it, it'll just continue to spin. This is how he's trying to learn about levitation. So now it can't work. I don't think it would work because I don't think cats are toast. So but it's that sort of science, that goofy, taking some of these science concepts and ideas and it's extrapolating them into a weird world. And I like the weird world. Alan Moore said that this was the hardest one to write because you had to take all of this scientific info and then translate it into a comical approach. But it's worth the read. I think Jack B. Quick is probably one of the favorites amongst people who do read this particular book. And again, I think Cobweb's probably the weakest of the bunch. I personally like Gray Shirt the most. I think First American is okay. Sometimes it hits the mark when it comes down to its satire and its parody, but sometimes it doesn't. Cobweb can be enjoyable. It really is a hit and miss, and I think it probably misses more than it hits. But even when it's missing, it's not a bad read. Some of it is a bad read. As I said, it's probably the weakest one, but it's got interesting art styles, interesting approaches. So later on, as I said, he had some issues writing the Jack B. Quick stuff. He goes on to, this is they wanted to come up with a another character that they could use, and eventually they came up with this one here, Splash Brannigan by Hilary Barta, which is somewhat like a Plastic Man of old. Trying to solve some crimes and working for a newspaper. And it goes about, and it's sort of a slapstick type of book. And again, I liked Splash Brannigan. I thought it was really good. I Yeah. So, is it a recommended read? Yes, it is a recommended read. So, what about collectible? Well, as a collectible, you can. It falls into your Alan Moore collection. It falls into your ABC collection, and by that I mean all America's Best Comics. There's the artists. Perhaps it's Kevin Nolan or Rick Vetch from the Gray Shirt material. So it has a few items as collectability is concerned. What about speculation and investment? I mean, this is an Alan Moore book. These are Alan Moore titles that are brand new. And the thing is, there isn't a lot of spec or investment on this book. Even going back to issue number one, which introduces all of these characters, other than Splash Brannigan in seven. This is issue number one features the first appearance of these characters, but there doesn't seem to be any buzz at all about their first appearance. So you can buy a copy of issue number one. Now, all of this stuff, it's conceivable that you could find a great deal of it in a dollar bin. Recently, I found some of the books from the ABC line in the dollar bin. Primarily Tom Strong, which I think was probably one of the bigger sellers because it was very superheroic. Um, but you can find other ones. I've also found copies of Promethea in the dollar bin for $1 a piece. At one point in time, and this is probably going back a few years, I found a copy of issue number 1 of Promethea in a dollar bin. So it's not like this is one of the specials, by the way, that also introduces a character called Johnny Thunder, which is a future time traveler type of person. I think it's supposed to have a little bit to do with not necessarily Johnny Quest, but more of a future traveler adventurer type of thing. And there were 2 of these specials that came out there. But as I say, none of this stuff really hits onto the speculator or investor point. If I was going to spec on anything, I would be picking up that issue number 1 if I could. If that's strictly, if I'm not looking to read it or anything like that, I just want to spec on it. I would consider number 1 would be that's where you'd want to go because it does introduce all of these characters. But as I say, none of this stuff is really high end. You may have to start finding this stuff in the $3 to $5 bin, and it's going to be tough to find some of those books. Like I've been looking for issue number 12 for. It's always on the back of my mind whenever I go to these places, or I look into dollar bins or even $5 bins trying to find it. But the print run was not as large as say X-Men or whatever it was. So finding some of these copies may be a bit of a challenge. I know that when I talk about Promethea, eventually, the later issues are extremely hard to find. From Tomorrow Stories, though, there was a spin-off, and I really liked this spin-off. Again, it was Gray Shirt by Rick Vetch, and he was the primary for the whole thing. Alan Moore didn't write this. And it's basically the origin of Gray Shirt. It's a crime story, so it goes back and forth between, the now, but it's mainly to do with the past and the development of Gray Shirt's character and where he came from and how it all came to be. And it's an enjoyable read. It's a 6-issue series called Indigo Sunset, and I really liked this one as well. As I say, a little bit more of a Gray Shirt fan as opposed to anything else. So, yeah, I do recommend a read. I recommend it for anybody. I don't have any reservations about that whatsoever. If you like superhero stuff, there's a little bit of that in there, but it's got the anthology. It is written by Alan Moore, who is a quality writer. The artwork never fails you. And there are 4 stories. This is one of the things I always like about anthologies is that there are 4 stories included in here. And you may not like 1 or 2 of them, but you may like the other 1 or 2. So that's what I like about anthologies is that there's bound to be something in there that you're going to enjoy. For me personally, most of the time, all 4 stories worked for me. So I enjoyed the whole Moral Stories thing. And as I say, very happy with the 6-issue series Indigo Sunset featuring Gray Shirt. All relatively inexpensive. Finding it might be a bit of a challenge if you don't shop online, and I don't. But if you're like hunting dollar bins and $3 to $5 bins, this is where you may be able to find all of this material. As I said, 12 issues for the regular run, 2 specials, and 6 from the Gray Shirt. So you're looking at a total of 20 issues, really, for Tomorrow Stories. It's a good series to read. If you get a chance, you can even just pick up 1. If you only find 1 in a dollar bin or whatever, pick that one up because they're not necessarily, they aren't a continuation of the story. Each story is an individual story. And as I say, for the most part, they're all very good. So if you find one, pick one up and enjoy it. And in the meantime, hey, be good to yourself, be good to others. We'll talk again soon.